Hi, it's Anthony from CarPlayLife.com, and today I'll be sharing a video with my previously installed Dasaita Vivid 10. If you've been following the channel and my recent community posts, I installed this quite a number of weeks ago, and I didn't want to bring my video out until I was fully ready with how it just generally works, and as well as I had a few drives coming up that would do over 4 hours, and I wanted to see what the longevity of it like, what the stability of it was like, and just generally so I can get my full-on impressions of this head unit installed inside my Golf. So to answer a few questions that I've also had supplied to me from various people that are interested in this install. First things first is, why did I do it? Basically, I went from an MIB1 unit to a Alpine system that had CarPlay. The original MIB unit didn't have CarPlay, and it was a toss-up between the Alpine system or doing a retrofit of an MIB2 system. The Alpine seemed a better bang for the buck in terms of its display size and what it could do, and the fact that Alpine reached out and they offered to install it for us quite a few years ago. Now, that's been about 4 or 5 years ago now, and in that time we've had wireless CarPlay, higher resolution displays, and I think because of that I was looking around to see what else I could do to improve my CarPlay experience in my Golf in particular. The Dasaita offers a bespoke install for the Golf 7. It comes with this fascia unit as well, and you get a nice 10.2 inch display over my Alpine 9-inch display. The Alpine also had a low resolution for its display. The DPI was very high, so everything was all very pixelated, chunky and everything like that. The resolution of the Alpine was 800 by 480, and I'm going up to a 720p display with this 10-inch of the Vivid. So not only are you getting a bigger size, you're also getting a high resolution as well. Also, with the Vivid system running Android 10, it's got an 8-core processor, so generally under the hood, things were just going to be a lot quicker in terms of the functionality, booting up, as well as navigating between certain functionalities of the car. I like the idea of a custom launcher and the ability to customize it. And being a design person myself, I found it very exciting that I had the ability to maybe customize my own theme using the various launchers that are available on Android. And finally, there was no other alternatives that are out there. That most of them meant that you would either have a floating display, and there's not really solutions that are out there that integrated it just like the original Alpine system. I know that Alpine has now brought out a newer system, but I still think the Android has a lot more going for it in terms of what it can do, as well as the things that it could do in the future as well. Some people also said that the AI boxes, why didn't I just go for an AI box if I'm going to go to an Android system? Personally, I think it's not quite the same. You've got the integration of the car systems in with the Android experience, and you're not sort of bolting on another layer on top. And of course, the under the hood as well, that has a lot more performance underneath it, more RAM, and just generally it's a much more seamless experience. So my overall install was a little bit tricky at first. The heating and temperature dials and things like that was just easy to pull out. The fascia system itself was also easy to pull out. I also took away the center console area, which housed the USB module, and I also ended up having to go into the glove box as well. But the main thing was I wouldn't be able to get the harness. The harness is a very big and chunky thing, and that was very hard to get out of the system without going into the glove box area. But the glove box area is only an additional sort of 5 or 6 screws. It requires you to go into the side panel as well to take the whole thing fully out. But once you've done that, you get easy access to the harness, and then I was able to release the harness from the Alpine harness itself that was attached to it, and also pull out a number of cables that came with the Alpine system. I decided to keep the USB system from Alpine in the lower compartment area because I wanted to reuse that USB for CarPlay, and anyone that wants to use Android Auto wired as well, they could use that USB from there. I couldn't get aux working for some reason, and I think that's an app related issue, but I've never used the aux input, so that's not really an issue for me. And having the ability with the glove box being open, I was able to capitalize on that and use the various channels to install a number of features, such as the building into the USB area, so I don't have to have USB running down the sides. And also wired up my camera, which is up here, and I've actually brought that through the internal system as well, using the same cable and using the side panels as well that I had to remove. So overall, after all this, I had much cable less setup than my previous setup, and all that required is just to buy some internal interior tools to safely remove the various bits from the interior. But once that hurdle was taken over, I found the actual installation was pretty straightforward and fairly easy, even though it did take a number of days because I had to replace a couple of cables. The 3 cables that came for DAB, the FM aerial, and the GPS, they all didn't really work with my 2014 model. They might work for a new model, but they didn't really match the cables up that the Alpine was originally connecting to. So I did have to replace those with a few that I got from Amazon, and I'll link those down below should you be wishing to do a similar install on a similar age model of Golf. But basically I had to order a dual set of connectors for the DAB aerial as well as the FM aerial, and then I had to get a separate FM antenna to the one that they supplied. So boot up is very similar to as you've seen it in my previous video. I'll just start up now. And you can see that it's pretty much instant because thankfully it's got a sleep mode that you can set in the settings, and then you can set that to like even an hour away from since it last installed, and it will just stay in standby. Low power, it's not going to drain the battery too much, but when you get back in the car that quickly, such as going for gas, running into the home or something, and you're going to be back in a couple of minutes, if you've got a very short amount of time set like I have, which is about 5 minutes of standby time, when you get back in the car and you fire up, the system fires up super quick and it's very impressive. So as you see there, it fired up straight into Android, super quick, and it fired up Z-Link, and I'm back into CarPlay, nice and quick. I can hit the car section and it will go back to the interface from CarWebGuru. I replaced the Vivid launcher. I really wasn't a fan of that launcher, and overall I think it just basically, it didn't really work for me. But luckily, being Android, you can load any type of launcher in this system and it will just install perfectly fine. And I've been pretty happy with it, but I do want to make a few changes. As you can see here, on this particular theme that I've designed, and I might sell this on my Etsy shop, the files for it, the time, you've got a indication of the weather through symbols, the local weather to you and the high and lows, as well as the outlook, date and time. Then you've got any music that's playing, such as anything that's going through the Android system will appear in here. The speed that you're currently going at, as well as how fast you've been on the roads. And then you've got, I have put in a model of the GTI here, and it stamps your make and model. And then this is the total mileage that it's been clocked up since it last got reset. You've got play controls, whether you want to go dab into Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And then I've got 5 of my most used apps, which is the radio, amplifier, because I've been tweaking the amplifier settings, apps menu, CarPlay, and DAB. So that's just the general interface. There's no side screens, and you can tap these to go into the various sections, as well as entering like CarPlay again, and then just boot up CarPlay. So from CarPlay, you can just navigate as you would do with CarPlay. It behaves totally fine. It's only crashed on me once after about 20 minutes, super random. And that was the start of my 4-hour trip. But since then, for 2 hours solid, didn't crash at all. And coming home for that solid 2 hours, it didn't crash either then. So I would chalk that down as just an anomaly. It could actually be in the Wi-Fi nearby, knocking it out. Over wireless CarPlay, no problems at all. Sounds great as well. So I tried Nova Launcher. That was my original go-to. It did function quite well, very smooth. But I just wanted to do this 3-tile layout, and the CarWebGuru gave me all the tools that allow me to do that. So if I go into Spotify and that's playing out, then I go back home, that's now playing out on the media player section that I put in here. And this is playing through the Spotify Android app. Unfortunately, CarPlay Spotify wouldn't work unless you fire up Spotify at the same time, and Spotify will pull down your interactions with CarPlay and display it on that tile there. But most likely you're going to be in CarPlay at this point, listening to the Spotify section. You can see it's playing through here. If I go back home, it's now playing through that. I did find initially that the volume control is very loud for number 1. So you can do a couple of changes here where you basically go into the car settings and then go into the car section, and under factory settings and enter 126, go into the factory settings, and then you basically go into the other section, and there is a amp volume, and if you set that to around about -3, that gives you a little bit more headroom for the volume to go a little bit lower without being too loud. But unfortunately, I have to reboot the whole system to enable that. But that was one of the first niggles that I encountered, and that's one how to overcome it. I did find it a little bit contrasty as well, so I've reduced that from 50 to 45%, and it's a little bit less garish now in its colors, especially with ways where the greens and the blues are quite bright. So you're going to be seeing the boot up time now and how long it takes to get into the system. I think it's roughly a little bit faster than the Alpine. And obviously once you've got that sleep mode in effect, then it's like within seconds, it's up and running and you can fire up anything then. So I've got a Z-Link automatically firing on launch because basically I'm always going to use CarPlay. So with number one, it's a little bit lower now by 3 decibels. So if you want a more bigger hit, you want to bring that even lower than 3 decibels. You can go into up to 20, I think it is, but it would take a lot of presses to get to a maximum volume, where I think like here is about 12 out of 20 or 30, I think it is. So I think -3 is a good middle ground. And you can tweak that as well in the audio settings, again, in the factory settings menu. So the one thing I was worried about is getting access to the car system and what kind of thing that looks like. I knew that was going to be list-based because I saw it when it wasn't connected in my demo pod. And one thing is that it will look basically like this. So the MIB, the stock default, has its own fancy system display. Here it's a lot more basic and it's all basically in list form. So whenever you press the mode button by the gear stick, you can have it go here because it will always go to the last page that you're on in the control settings. So if I quit out of this and I go home and I press the mode button by the gear stick, it'll take me back here again. And from here it's done like switches rather than you selecting them. It's the same process. If I come out of eco and I go to like things like normal, it just switches over. But if I go to individual, you've got more settings that you'd have to toggle between it. I did buy a ODB2 module and that is installed. I still not really up to speed with the things that you can do, but just to show you that it's working and it's connected, it does use an independent Bluetooth connection to connect to it. Once it's connected, you can actually run all the various bits and bobs, and you can see ODB is connected to in the drop down up here as well, and that will always be connected. So that's running in the background. I'm really novice at that, and I think I'm gonna learn a little bit more, then I'll do another video in the future as to what the ODB2 can provide here. And if you know anything about this a bit more and a few things that I should check out, then let me know in the comments and I'll definitely check them out, and I'll have a bit more of a play with the ODB2 module. But as CANBUS settings goes, it's not brilliant. I found a few problems in terms of its compatibility with my year of vehicle. So in control settings, this is basically all you would have access to with the onboard system. So you can control your wipers, change unit values, lighting, and so on. I made the mistake of resetting all that before I did the install because I was a little worried that things might get locked down and I wouldn't be able to change them to what I had them originally. I kind of regret that now. I wish I just left them as is because the system just pulls all that information in, and if it's already set, you shouldn't really need to change it. And unfortunately, there's a few things I can't change. I should be able to do it through the ODB2 software, I think. And there's things like that's not even familiar for my system. None of these come with my system, but I'd imagine that if you've got a model 2015 or more, then these might be supported. But this is the CANBUS number that I should be using. I think it's 35. If I should be using something else, then let me know in the comments. But there are a couple of things in here that are available, but I can't interact with them. They're just dead. And I would have thought the CANBUS for this model should be telling me that, but it still shows it. Another issue that I had was the speed alarm. I can't turn that off. If I turn it off now, it will just come back on again and it will reset the speed to 25 miles an hour. That would mean that I get an alarm every time it got to 25 miles an hour. So I've set that over 80 to help just literally cancel out that warning, but unfortunately I can't even just turn that off. So that again could be a CANBUS issue, but everything else is working totally fine. You've got ambient lights. Again, that's a feature I don't have in my vehicle, but it's there. but everything else that was originally there, as far as I'm aware, it's all here, and you can interact with it through the various switches and things like that. You also have vehicle. That's another sort of area. From here you can do, I've got TPMS built into, but it's just air pressure detection. It doesn't do tire pressures. That's why I don't have anything here, but I did, as my journey set off, I did have to stop the car, check my tires, because I did get a warning, and it just means that I just didn't press the set button, and that was all set because I originally cleared everything off. So that's why that came up, but that was a good sign to know that that was still working. And you can got all the vehicle range and the speed that you've gone, when the next service is, all that information is still present. But unfortunately, CarWebGuru or any other launches can't dip into that information. That would have been really nice to pull all that out and display it, but I couldn't see of any way to carry that across, which is a shame. In terms of mapping for the wheel, I found that all the controls worked apart from call and the speaker phone dictation buttons. The dictation button normally would fire up Siri at the same time when you've got CarPlay running, and it would also fire up Google Assistant if you're running the AI boxes, for example. That just muted the system. So what I had to do is just go into wheel key study. So you just basically press the button, and then you can just assign what you want it to be. Down the very bottom is CarPlay, and then you can hit that, and then it assigns as CarPlay. So then when I press that wheel button now, it will just fire up CarPlay. And the best thing is, over all the systems that are previously installed in this, and this is a game changer for me, the call button I never use, but with this system and the software, I can remap that and have that go back, and I can go back again and go back again, and I can swap between these two, and I can also go back to the Android system as well. So that's just really, really nice to be able to go into CarPlay and then press back. I can go to the home and then back again. I can go back to the main menu and then back again, home. But I think if I press it fast, it will go back to the Android system. I find that really, really nice. If I push the CarPlay button or the call button and I press it again, I've got Siri. So no change to my previous Alpine system. And that's just generally how you go about mapping your wheel controls. Super handy. You can completely change the functionality of them. You can make it launch an app if you wanted to. Super, super cool. The one thing I've done for internet, because this thing really comes into its own when it's connected to the internet, and I think it's super important. If you don't do that, then unless you've got to use these apps on Android or any of this sort of like metadata that requires internet, such as weather and Spotify, for example, you do need an internet connection. So out of the 3 USB connections that they give you, one of them is going to a MiFi device, which is plugged into the USB. That means you don't connect to the internet through Wi-Fi, you connect to it through USB. So that frees up Wi-Fi for CarPlay. So this is actually online. So basically I've done a data plan of around about 5 gig, and I need to check it at the end of the month to see how much I've used up in the car system. But I really don't think it's going to be that much, because all it is just pulling the metadata in for music and the weather. So I'm really not using the internet that much, and I probably could go down a couple of tiers to like 2 or 3 gigabytes per month. But that SIM card's in that MiFi device, and it just gets powered through the USB cable. So completely hassle-free, it works, and I got that from them as well. It's just a MiFi dongle, and I'll link to it down below as well. But as you can expect, I've shown you it before. You can just literally fire up YouTube if you're stationary. It can work when you're driving as well if you wanted to, but I've not tried that. And this is all coming through the MiFi device, so it's really nice and fast and buffers it nicely well. So here you can have YouTube playing. It's all in sync, and it all comes out through the car speakers. So that's the good thing about doing the glove box part. You can just wire that cable through into the glove box, and I've got the MiFi connecting into that. The other USB, I've connected it to the connection for CarPlay. There is a grey one. That's the one that you have to use for CarPlay. And then the other black one is powering the DAB USB module that you can buy separately. So going back to the home, and if I fire up DAB, this is one of the other issues that I found switching to this system. The DAB in the Alpine was perfect, no problems whatsoever. But we're going through the USB device, and we're going through software that's doing all the decoding and all that business. So I'm using DABZ, which is the most popular DAB app at the moment. And there was initially, when I first connected this up, and I really thought it was an aerial problem, that I was getting constant skips, but it turns out that that was the software. And now I'm on DAB using DABZ, and I can use the wheel controls to switch through my favorites. So it takes a little while to connect to the DAB, but once it's connected, it's all good to go. And from here, you can actually go to between all the stations that it's detects them all pretty well. But I think you've got to sort of try and find maybe a different DAB software, something that might be a little bit more reliable, a bit more stable. So that's DAB. Another thing I found was a little bit of an issue was the radio. This is the radio that comes with the system. It does an okay job, but when I did searching, it just didn't find any channels. And I'm up high here and it should find a lot of those channels, but unfortunately it didn't, unless you step through them, and you can hear them. Maybe it's very sensitive in stereo. And I've played with the DX settings for radio, but they don't seem to lock down on the FM frequencies. So I'm on the lookout for a better FM app so I can actually use the FM radio. There is this nav radio. It did all the detection. It detected loads of frequencies, but for some reason, at least on this system, I'm not getting any sound from it. So I've still got to work that out. This is the free version, but I don't really want to pay for the paid version if the free one doesn't even work. But that seems like a better app for radio. So the microphone is really, really good on this system. It's actually up here on the top. I think it can use the existing, and I didn't plug anything specifically in. I think that comes through the harness for the microphone connection, because the Alpine never was connected to any auxiliary cable. But let me just show you CarPlay as a CarPlay test. Send an audio message to test. Hi, this is Anthony from CarPlayLife.com, and this is a test. I'm going to tap the microphone to make sure that it is that microphone. And this is an audio test using the built-in microphone on the actual head unit itself, and I'm talking directly to the steering wheel. So that's the quality of the microphone from this microphone in the actual head unit itself. I was super impressed when I tested this on the demo pod, and I knew that I didn't have to install the auxiliary microphone that you can place somewhere else, but I think that's perfectly acceptable. It's actually even better than my Alpine, so I was very happy with that microphone quality. It sounds good too, just the stereo. Its sound is pretty much just as good, if not a little bit better than the Alpine system. You've got this equalizer here that I've played around with loads to get the sound quality I like. I like quite a deep bass and high treble in my music, so that's why it's set there. You can set pre-record settings down here, so you can have normal up that, and that just sounds perfectly fine. This all worked totally fine. I don't have a sub. I didn't find I needed to cut out frequency on, but these sounded a little bit better when I had these set to their current settings. And here I've got it slightly positioned here so I can actually feel a bit more stereo sound, and you can go nuts with this if you wanted to by dialing in decibel and distances between speakers and things like that. So if you want to sit in here for hours and completely tweak, you really can. Here you can see Dad's playing out of that music panel there. But once I got it all tweaked with the audio, totally happy with how this sounds. Another thing was reverse. This is probably my most disliked feature of this system. Originally, it would take over the whole screen because I don't have a rear view camera, so I can't really set up or show you the rear view camera. But here would normally display the rear view camera feed, and you get this radar here. But on the Alpine system, it's like a full screen radar. And unfortunately, you just have this tiny one here, and I can't relocate this to anywhere else on the screen. You can turn it off, but that's all you can do. You've still got the same kind of like warnings around the car, but I would have liked it if it was just took over the whole screen, went full screen, nice big in the middle, but unfortunately that's not displaying as I would like it. But that's just something I've just got to learn how to like, and you can change all the audio settings like the sound deadening down, you can do all that business. But that's just one of my little gripes from this system. And then going back from a gear, it would just disappear from the display. And that would display over CarPlay, Android Auto, as well as this Android system as well. So the other thing that I encountered was turn-by-turn navigation over Siri. That I just couldn't figure out how to change the volume of Siri playback over your normal audio playback. Usually you would go into things like Google here, change the volume, and as this plays out,
You can change navigation volume with your car's controls, but only when navigation is speaking.
So you would normally change the volume at this point and it would set that navigation volume over the default audio volume, but that is just a global volume. So if I set that to low or high, then the audio will be exactly the same level, and I can't figure out at all. I've looked on forums. Oddly, no one seems to be mentioning it, so I don't know if that's the system with the Golf or the buttons itself, but I just couldn't figure out how to change that. There's a factory settings area where you can change the volume, but that's just the gain volume. It's not the navigation volume. But the best thing is that I use Waze mostly as my navigation. And in the Waze app, you can set the navigation volume to be higher than the audio volume that comes over CarPlay, and that works. So Waze navigation is a little bit louder than the music, and just generally when you do get Siri or navigation come over, it does lower the volume a little bit and she comes out. But if you're not mixing it together, the volume will be identical to the navigation volume, and that's just one of the other gripes that I've encountered when installing the system. So other than that, and the having to buy the additional cables, which is only a couple of extra pounds, overall I think it was totally worth installing. I have no regrets installing it at all. It was a little bit of a mission, and the whole process of getting this installed, it sounds good, it looks great. I'm sure I'm going to tweak this theme, do a bit more simpler theme as well, so you can just have like tiles or buttons, a bit like the Sony system, where you can just literally fire up the various apps that you want to choose. I don't think this meta stuff is that important. As soon as you go into CarPlay, you don't see it. But if you like that kind of metadata as you play or drive and you want to have something nice to look at, then that's for you if you like that kind of stuff. But having the channeling of the cables, that was really nice to do. It doesn't really integrate that well with the center console between the cluster. It actually does nothing. It's like a black screen, and sometimes you do get some radio stuff come in. So it also knocks out the navigation compass. That doesn't seem to function anymore. And on the music status, it just shows as FM1 and there's nothing on the cluster. But that's something I'm used to the Alpine. The Alpine would just show Alpine and it would just not show any metadata into the center cluster. So that's nothing I really missed out on in the first place. So if you're looking to do this kind of install, let us know in the comments if you have any questions and I'll see if I can answer them for you. But generally, super happy, really nice display, super bright, vivid, sharp. CarPlay works perfectly. I'm sure Android Auto does too, like I have shown you on the demo pod version of the video. And I'm sure I'm going to be tweaking this theme as well along the way and just try out a few different things as well. All right, I hope you found this video helpful. If it has, leave us a like down below. And like I said earlier, if you have any questions about this install, let me know in the comments down below. You can check out all my other receiver and head unit reviews up in this top playlist up here. Hit that subscribe button down below to catch all my future content, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.